Sometimes churches can be the hardest places to be honest, especially for ministers, those who should have their life and faith all sorted out. And I've tried to be honest in my preaching, and this morning is no different. But this morning it may be a little harder to hear what I have to say. But my intention is to show that faith is part of all aspects of life. I came back from Synod last week with a claim and commendation about my Bible study, apparently. People said it was a breath of fresh air, bold, even stunning. But you guys get that sort of stuff every week, so it's no big deal for you. What a few people knew was that underneath I was shattered. My life had fallen apart. I only went to Synod on Friday and I came home early, and I realised something I never imagined, that my marriage seemed to be ending. And last Sunday I was sitting in the back pew an hour or so before the service started by myself, because there doesn't seem to be too many people here at church 90 minutes before the service. And I was thinking of ways to kill myself. My life had hit rock bottom and I could see no way out. I was thinking of methods, places and timing to end the pain and for life to carry on without me. And I was hoping that the gracious God that I so often preached about would understand why I was doing this, and that I could finally come home. I told myself that hundreds of people die every day, so it's no big deal. I told myself that this would hurt my kids far less than them going through a possible divorce. Last week I wanted to die. And last Sunday morning, well before people arrived, I told myself that Habakkuk, the book that we're reading today, was going to be my last sermon. So I thought I'd read it, just to see what it said. And then I went and played the piano for the songs that Sunday, because I wanted the service to go well, of course. And there were words like, I believe in Jesus and I belong to Jesus. And my tears flowed, because it is so hard to trust and believe when life gets unbearable. It's easy to believe in God when life is good. But when sorrow, regret, and sadness fill every fibre of your being, trusting and believing is almost impossible. It is faith that is beyond us. To believe when everything within me says there is nothing more to believe in. You know, in some way I thought of the pain that God must have felt when the people he loved, and they were meant to love him, they turned their backs on him and walked away. And in my own limited and imperfect way, I saw the pain, and all it did was increase my sorrow. But then over time, God showed me something. He, I guess, answered my prayer. You know, sometimes when we ask God for answers, he answers us in ways we don't expect. Habakkuk had a complaint against God, and it seemed that God wasn't doing anything about all the violence and wickedness all around him. So Habakkuk said, what are you going to do about it, God? You know, sometimes we ask God about stuff, don't we? What are you going to do about it? But sometimes the problem arises when we realise that God is actually doing something about it. When God gave the answer, Habakkuk wasn't ready for it. God was actually at work. He was raising up the Babylonians. a cruel and violent people. They were going to march across the land, and they were going to be God's punishing rod. This created a second complaint by Habakkuk. Surely you don't plan to wipe us out. I mean, that wasn't the answer I was looking for, God. It's a little extreme, isn't it? How can you do that? How can that be your answer? How can you abide using the evil Babylonians to bring evil upon us because of our evilness? And when they conquer us, will they think that they've done it by their power and they will give no glory to you? I mean, will you, God, let them do that to us? Or to you? And sometimes it seems that God doesn't make sense, especially when life is out of control. And then the Lord spoke a second time. He said, be patient and you will see that things will certainly happen. But what will happen? Well, the wealth and the security gained by dishonest means will crumble beneath those who work so hard to achieve it. The sorrow that people brought to others, they themselves will taste. And the terror people brought, they will have. And the idols that people made by their own hands will not save anyone. So the things that you reacted so strongly against initially, Habakkuk, will indeed be dealt with. In the end, God says all the toil, or the selfishness, or the violence, or the evil pursuits, they will come to nothing. Well, in fact, it won't be just nothing. It will come to sorrow. There will be sorrow for the dishonest, sorrow for the murderer, sorrow for the corrupt, for the proud, for the lustful, for the greedy. Sorrow, sorrow, sorrow awaits them for the life that they chose. And the idols that they created to give them meaning and significance and power and substance will do nothing to help them. They are speechless, deaf, lifeless creations. They are useless. And in the end, there will be silence before the Lord in his holy temple. Because before the Lord, nothing can stand or speak or resist. There will only be silence. And so from these questions and answers in the first two chapters of Habakkuk, it leads to the third and final chapter of Habakkuk's song. In the silence and in the presence of God, everything becomes clearer. He saw the amazing works of God. In our deepest need, God helps again. And even in God's anger, God remembers his mercy. There is this incredible imagery of God moving across the deserts and the mountains, the heavens and the earth. There is splendor and brilliance. There is overwhelming power. The earth shakes, the nations tremble, and the everlasting mountains shatter before God. There continues incredible descriptions of God at work, and God is doing one thing and one thing only. He is bringing salvation to this world. But this salvation actually comes through trials and hardships as God deals with the reality of evil in this world. And we remember this every week. We come here through our communion. The trials and hardships that Jesus himself had to go through. Because evil isn't a clean-cut removal that we just say with a few words and we think, that's it, done. Maybe go to the doctors and fixed. It is a complex, messy work that hurts to heal and it purges to clean. And the hardest thing is to wait on the Lord when disaster is upon us now. But when there is nothing else we can do, what else can we do? And so Habakkuk ends with these famous words. And I don't know if you've ever gone through a season when the crops fail, but it can be a very frightening time. Even though the fig trees have no blossoms and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crops fail and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the field and the cattle barns are empty, yet will I rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. They are incredibly powerful words. In a world that looks to all sorts of things for security, circumstances in life can be devastating. One moment, life is what one expects, and the next, everything changes. It's not an uncommon occurrence. An accident, a phone call telling bad news, a silly argument that gets out of hand. Life changes completely through unpredictable and even planned events, and regardless, the outcome is still shocks and it still disturbs. And so what can we do when we can't do anything? We look to God and we hold on to the promises we heard so much about in the Bible. We trust even though we want this agony to go away. And over time, with good support, taking care of yourself, you begin to see that perhaps in the midst of this turmoil, God was right there beside us all along. That life will be okay, even if it isn't what you expected, even if you thought there was no future ahead. You hold on and we trust. And like me, it may mean taking it hour by hour, maybe even day by day. And who knows, perhaps I may even be able to look at next week. But there's no hurry. Habakkuk shows that God answers prayers in ways we probably cannot imagine in our life. God is working in our lives in ways that we cannot see sometimes. And this is why we have faith. Faith that passes our understanding. Faith that is able to believe in God, even if it is holding on to the tiniest thread. And in time we will see that what God has been doing all along. By the way, I'm not planning on this being my final sermon.